Hello, I'm Zara Burton and welcome to 18 Degrees North. It's from right here, 18 degrees north of the equator in Kingston, Jamaica, where every week we're going to take you on a global journey with us as we bring you Caribbean stories that have global impact. And we begin our show with a special report on political prosecutions in the Caribbean. Whether it's a case of bribery, fraud, money laundering, or misappropriation of funds, somehow in the Caribbean, politicians who engage in these activities often seem to get off. So how do other countries investigate and successfully prosecute corrupt government officials? With special funding from the U.S. State Department TV and Radio Co-op program, 18 Degrees North decided to dissect the case of former New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin, whose major corruption case included a first-class flight to Jamaica in 2005 and paid for by contractors. For the first of this two-part report on the lessons we can learn from the Nagin case, let's head 30 degrees north and 90 degrees west to New Orleans in Louisiana.
This is the storm of the century.
He was the man leading a city out of crisis.
This is a national disaster. Get every doggone Greyhound bus line in the country and get them moving to New Orleans.
Instead, the FBI says he chose to enrich himself, his family, and friends. On September 8, 2014, former New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin reported to federal prison to serve a 10-year sentence, joining 20 other government officials convicted in New Orleans since Hurricane Katrina. Nagin came to power in 2002 in this predominantly African-American city on a platform of anti-corruption.
And I pledge to you my commitment to run an honest and efficient city government.
A former general manager at a major cable provider, Nagin hadn't held public office before.
He was sort of the golden boy, you know. He came in as a businessman who could reform government, no more corruption.
His predecessor, Mark Morial, he had given out a lot of contracts to friends. His administration was dogged with a lot of allegations of cronyism. There was a big federal investigation into his administration as well. And Ray Nagin said, I'm going to clean all this up, and I think the people really believed that.
At first, Nagin got high marks from the public. He invited the federal government in to investigate the previous administration and arrested city employees who took bribes to hand out taxi permits to unqualified drivers. Then, 2 years into office, Nagin's own cracks started to show.
There was this idea that, well, he's a black mayor. He's supposed to do what previous black mayors have done. We want our contracts, and he wasn't buying that. So in an effort to get Ray's attention, it was conceived by some black ministers, and they went in there in a group and literally accosted him in his office. They called him a white man in a black man's skin, and that just shook him to his knees. He was never the same. He wound up running off a lot of very qualified people that he had initially brought in.
He had hired a guy who was kind of a wonderkind, a kind of a whiz kid who was supposed to fix up City Hall's technology systems, which were very antiquated. And this guy was from the private sector, and he was kind of fast and loose with how he did public contracting. He hired a bunch of his old friends from the technology sector.
I don't think he was a great judge of talent. He hired some people that were simply inept, and he hired some people that had a lot to do with him going down the path of corruption.
So I'd started looking into that. Actually, prior to Katrina, I was investigating that, and then Katrina kind of made me put that down because obviously that was a much bigger story.
In 2005, Hurricane Katrina, a Category 5 storm, made landfall in Louisiana, causing death and destruction. The world's eyes were transfixed on New Orleans, and the profile of its straight-talking, no-nonsense mayor grew exponentially.
This is our line in the sand.
A tidal wave of relief money came rushing in. Nagin easily won re-election, but not before making some racially divisive comments.
This city will be chocolate at the end of the day. It's the way God wants it to be.
But he had the position and control of the money, lots of it.
Not only with the money coming in, but people from outside were coming in desperate to make the billions of dollars that were available in contracts, which the mayor could literally hand out.
Prosecutors say to secure those lucrative city contracts, gifts deemed as bribes to the mayor started rolling in, including a $50,000 check and shipments of granite pumped into his son's business, Super Bowl tickets, trips to Chicago, New York, Hawaii, and a famous one to Jamaica, only 3 months into Hurricane Katrina. Friends say bad decision and bad timing.
As much as I'd like to come to Jamaica, I wouldn't have taken a free trip to Jamaica while the rest of us were living in ruins and trying to get our lives back. That cut so hard that I will never get over it.
The alleged kickbacks came to light after vendors complained about how technology contracts were being awarded.
And then the net kind of widened because there was some indications that these guys were taking care of the mayor as well.
Turns out one vendor, Mark St. Pierre, had paid for many of the mayor's trips and had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars to his technology chief, Greg Meffert, to win millions of dollars in city work. In no time, the FBI was on the case, both men cooperating with prosecutors against Nagin for lighter sentences.
The FBI was there looking at the previous administration, trying to find some type of evidence for public corruption. So, you know, he gave the government the keys to his house. They stayed, they never left, and he ended up becoming a victim of his own doing.
There were not any wiretaps, no hidden camera type smoking gun in this case.
Proving guilt would come down to emails, bank statements, and canceled checks, even Nagin's own testimony. By the time the gavel dropped,
a jury found the former New Orleans mayor guilty of bribery.
Nagin was convicted on 20 criminal counts, including bribery, conspiracy, and money laundering, all tied to payments and gifts he received for granting city contracts.
This case is a reminder that the old gumshoe, old school type of investigative work that may take 5 years to undertake can result in a conviction.
The verdict was a blow to Nagin, who to this day denies the allegations.
Others made millions, and what he got was a trip to the Super Bowl or the playoff game. Nagin got a trip to Jamaica. He and his family had a trip to New York. And those who were at the core of the corruption made millions. And I think he was prosecuted primarily for his personal interest in some of the comments that he made, more so than his conduct as mayor.
When we come back, if Ray Nagin were Jamaican, Bahamian, or Trinidadian, would he have gone to prison? Is it a problem of weak laws or simply a lack of will?
People will ask you for anything. You have to have the courage to tell them no. Telling people yes is not how you get elected. It's doing the right thing.
When we come back for the second part of our special report on 18 Degrees North. The preceding